The words came out of her mouth like venom wrapped in silk. "Diane, this kitchen is too small for both of us?" I was standing at the sink, my hands submerged in soapy water, washing the dinner plates I had just served to my son Marcus, his wife Vanessa, and their 2 children. The kitchen wasn't small. It was the kitchen I had designed myself 32 years ago, when my late husband Gerald and I built this house from the ground up. Every tile, every cabinet, every window placement had been my decision. But Vanessa stood there in her cream cashmere sweater and designer jeans, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a stain on her perfectly curated life. "I'm Diane Hartwell, and before I tell you what I did next, I need your honest answer. If your daughter-in-law said those words to you in your own home, would you have done what I did? Or am I the villain here? Keep that thought, because by the end, I want your verdict." I didn't respond immediately. I've learned over the past 18 months since moving in with Marcus and Vanessa that silence is sometimes the only dignity left. I rinsed the plate slowly, placed it in the drying rack, and dried my hands on the embroidered kitchen towel my mother had given me 40 years ago. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Vanessa sighed, the kind of sigh that said she was exhausted by my mere existence. "I mean exactly what I said. I need space. I can't cook properly with someone always hovering. You're always here, always underfoot. Maybe it's time you found your own place." The room suddenly felt smaller, not because of its dimensions, but because of how her words seemed to suck all the oxygen out. Marcus walked in then, holding his phone, scrolling through something. He looked up briefly, saw the tension, and immediately his shoulders dropped. "What's going on?" he asked, but his tone was resigned, like he already knew and didn't want to deal with it. "Your mother and I were just discussing living arrangements," Vanessa said smoothly, turning to him with that perfect smile she reserved for when she wanted something. "I think it's time we all had some breathing room." Marcus looked at me, then at her, then back at his phone. That's when I knew. He wasn't going to defend me. He wasn't going to tell his wife that this was my house, that I had let them move in when their startup failed, that I had paid for the kids' private school this year when they couldn't afford it. He was just going to stand there and let her erase me. "Mom," he started, and I could already hear the weakness in his voice. "Maybe Vanessa has a point. You know, for everyone's mental health, maybe having your own space again would be good for you." Good for me, as if I was the problem. As if I was the one who had spent the last year and a half making snide comments about outdated decorating choices and old people smells and how some women just don't know when it's time to step back. I had sold my downtown condo to help them when Marcus lost his job. I had given them $40,000 without asking for repayment because family helps family. I had cooked their meals, watched their children, cleaned their messes, and swallowed every insult with a smile because I thought love meant sacrifice. But standing there, looking at my only son avoid my eyes while his wife smirked behind him, something inside me finally broke. Not my heart. That had been cracking slowly for months. What broke was the illusion that I owed them anything more. "You're right," I said quietly. Both of them looked surprised. Vanessa's eyebrows shot up. Marcus finally made eye contact. "I do need my own space. I'll be out by tomorrow." I walked out of the kitchen, up the stairs to the small guest room I'd been sleeping in since they took over the master bedroom, and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed I'd bought at a garage sale when I was first married, and I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Then I picked up my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to my attorney, Richard Castellano, who had handled my estate planning after Gerald died. Richard, it's Diane Hartwell. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. It's urgent. The second call was to my accountant, Miriam Chen. Miriam, I need a complete audit of every financial transaction I've made in the last 2 years, specifically anything involving my son. I need documentation of everything. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I pulled out the old leather trunk from the closet, the one that held all my important documents. Inside were the original property deeds, Gerald's will, my investment portfolios, and something else, something I had almost forgotten about. A sealed envelope that Gerald had given me 2 weeks before he died. "Don't open this unless you absolutely need to," he had said, his voice already weak from the cancer. "But if Marcus ever makes you feel like you don't matter, if he ever treats you the way my mother treated you, open it. I've made sure you'll never be powerless." I held that envelope in my hands for a long time. Gerald had been so different from Marcus. Strong, protective, principled. Where had I gone wrong in raising our son? What had I done that made him choose a woman like Vanessa over his own mother? The next morning, I was packed and ready by 6 a.m. I heard movement downstairs around 7. Vanessa was making her elaborate organic smoothie, the one that required 14 different ingredients and cost more than my weekly grocery budget used to be. I carried my suitcase down the stairs, one step at a time. The wheels made a soft thumping sound on each step. When I reached the bottom, Marcus was there, coffee cup in hand, looking uncomfortable. "Mom, you don't have to leave today. We can talk about this." I set my suitcase down and looked at my son. Really looked at him, maybe for the first time in months. He had Gerald's eyes, that same deep brown that used to look at me with such love. But there was something missing now, something I couldn't quite name. Weakness, maybe, or just the simple absence of spine. "There's nothing to talk about, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice level. "Vanessa made it very clear that I'm not welcome here anymore, and you made it equally clear by your silence that you agree with her." Vanessa appeared in the kitchen doorway, her blonde hair perfect even at 7 in the morning, her yoga outfit probably costing more than my entire suitcase of clothes. "Diane, don't be dramatic," she said, sipping her green smoothie. "We're not throwing you out. We're just suggesting that maybe it's healthier for everyone if you had your own place. Independence is important at your age." At my age. I'm 63 years old, not 90. I ran a successful interior design business for 30 years. I climbed mountains in Peru when I was 55. I learned to speak Italian at 60. But to Vanessa, I was just an old woman taking up space in her perfect life. "You're absolutely right," I said, and I meant it. Independence is important, which is why I called my lawyer yesterday. That got their attention. Marcus set his coffee cup down too hard, splashing liquid on the marble countertop I had chosen and paid for. Vanessa's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in confusion. "Your lawyer? Why would you need a lawyer?" I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. "Because this house is in my name. The deed, the title, everything. When your startup failed and you asked to move in temporarily, I agreed. But temporary has turned into 18 months, and I never transferred ownership. I never planned to." The color drained from Vanessa's face. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I spoke with my attorney this morning. I'm giving you 30 days' notice to vacate the property. After that, if you're still here, I'll begin formal eviction proceedings." My voice was steady, calm, almost pleasant. Inside, my heart was racing, but I'd learned something important in my 63 years. Real power doesn't shout. Real power doesn't need to. "You can't do this," Vanessa said, her voice rising. "We have children. We have nowhere to go. This is our home." "No," I said quietly. "This is my home. Your guests who have overstayed their welcome." Marcus found his voice finally, and it was angry. "So that's it? After everything we've been through as a family, you're just going to throw us out on the street?" "After everything we've been through?" I repeated, and for the first time, I let some of my pain show. "Marcus, I sold my condo to give you $40,000 when you needed it. I've paid for Lily and Mason's school this entire year. I've cooked every meal, cleaned every mess, and listened to your wife tell me daily that I'm not good enough, not modern enough, not invisible enough. And yesterday, when she told me this kitchen was too small for both of us, you said nothing. You defended nothing. So yes, after everything we've been through, I'm reclaiming my home and my life." I picked up my suitcase. "The attorney will send the formal notice today. You have 30 days. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, and for a second, just a second, I heard something like genuine concern in his voice. "That's no longer your business," I said. I walked out the front door, down the stone path Gerald and I had laid together one summer when Marcus was 10, and got into my car. Only when I pulled out of the driveway and turned the corner did I let myself breathe. My phone rang immediately. It was Vanessa. I let it go to voicemail. She called 4 more times before leaving a message. I listened to it at the first red light. "Diane, this is ridiculous. You're being vindictive and petty. If you go through with this, you'll never see your grandchildren again. I mean it. You'll lose us forever. Think about what you're doing." I deleted the message and blocked her number. Then I blocked Marcus's number too. If they wanted to communicate, they could do it through Richard Castellano. That's what lawyers are for. I drove to the Riverside Hotel, a beautiful old building downtown that had been renovated into luxury apartments. I had a reservation. I'd made it last night after my calls to Richard and Miriam. The penthouse suite, month-to-month lease. The woman at the front desk smiled warmly when I checked in. "Ms. Hartwell, welcome. We have you in the Victoria suite on the top floor. Beautiful river views. Will anyone be helping you with your luggage?" "Just me," I said. "Perfect." She handed me the key card. "The concierge is available 24 hours if you need anything at all." My suite was spectacular. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, a full kitchen with marble countertops, a bedroom with a king-size bed that had probably never seen anyone's tears, and most importantly, silence. Blessed, peaceful silence. I stood at the window for a long time, watching the river flow past, watching people walk their dogs along the riverside path, watching life continue exactly as it always had, while my world had just completely transformed. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Diane Hartwell?" a woman's voice asked. "This is she." "Ms. Hartwell, my name is Catherine Price. I'm calling from Chamberlain and Associates. Your accountant, Miriam Chen, asked me to reach out to you directly. I'm a forensic accountant, and I've been reviewing the documents you requested. I think we need to meet as soon as possible. There are some significant irregularities in the financial records involving your son." My hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that should be discussed in person. Are you available this afternoon?" I looked around my beautiful, empty, peaceful suite. "I'm available now." Catherine Price's office was in one of those old converted brownstones downtown, the kind with original hardwood floors and walls lined with law books that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and a handshake that meant business. "Ms. Hartwell, Thank you for coming so quickly, she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Just the truth, I said. She smiled at that, a small, knowing smile. I like directness. Let me be direct with you. She opened a thick folder on her desk. Over the past 18 months, your son Marcus has accessed your accounts 7 times. The $40,000 you mentioned giving him was only the beginning. There are 4 additional transfers totaling another $73,000, all of which appear to have been initiated using your online banking credentials. My stomach dropped. That's not possible. I never authorized any transfers beyond the original $40,000. That's what the records indicate. Do you share your banking passwords with anyone? No. I keep them written in a small notebook in my desk drawer at home. But I never thought. I trailed off, realization dawning. The house you just evicted them from? Catherine asked gently. Yes. Then they had access to that notebook for 18 months. She turned the folder toward me, showing me bank statements with transactions highlighted in yellow. Each one clearly showed transfers from my accounts to Marcus and Vanessa's joint checking account. Dates, amounts, everything. I felt sick. There's more, Catherine continued. 3 months ago, someone attempted to add Marcus's name to your investment portfolio at Silverton Financial. The request was denied because it required in-person verification with 2 forms of ID, which obviously didn't happen. The signature on the initial request form, however, is an almost perfect forgery of yours. How much is in that portfolio? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Catherine looked at me steadily. Including your late husband's life insurance investments and your own retirement savings, approximately $1.8 million. The number hung in the air between us. Nearly $2 million that my son had tried to access without my knowledge. What would you like to do with this information? Catherine asked. We have clear evidence of identity theft, financial fraud, and forgery. The police would be very interested. Alternatively, this strengthens your civil case considerably if you want to pursue repayment through the courts. I sat there, looking at those highlighted numbers, thinking about the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them sunshine flowers. Thinking about the teenager who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart. Thinking about the man who stood in my kitchen yesterday and let his wife demean me without saying a single word in my defense. I want to think about it, I said finally. Can you hold on to this information securely? Of course. Take all the time you need. As I was leaving, Catherine said, Ms. Hartwell, for what it's worth, I see cases like this more often than you'd think. Children who believe their parents' money belongs to them. Daughters-in-law who see their husband's family as obstacles rather than people. You're not alone in this. That's somehow both comforting and deeply depressing, I said. She laughed. Welcome to my world. I drove back to the hotel in a daze. The sun was setting over the river, painting everything in shades of orange and gold, beautiful and completely indifferent to my pain. In my suite, I finally opened Gerald's envelope. Inside was a letter in his distinctive handwriting, the letters slightly shaky from the medication he'd been taking near the end. My dearest Diane, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong with Marcus. I've tried to prepare you for this possibility, though I know you never wanted to believe it. Our son is weak, Diane. Not in body, but in character. He's easily influenced, easily led, and he inherited none of your strength or my principles. I saw it when he was young, but I hoped he'd grow out of it. By the time I realized he wouldn't, I was already sick, and I didn't want to burden you with my fears. So I made provisions. Attached to this letter, You'll find documentation for a trust I established 3 years before I died. It contains $2.3 million, invested conservatively and growing steadily. Only you can access it, and only under one condition: that Marcus has proven himself unworthy of your unconditional love. I know how that sounds. Cold, calculating, not like me at all. But I couldn't leave this earth knowing you might be left vulnerable because of our son's weakness. Use this money to protect yourself, to live the life you deserve, to never again feel powerless in the face of anyone's cruelty, including Marcus's. You owe him nothing beyond what you've already given, which is everything a mother could give. If he throws it back in your face, then you are released from any remaining obligation. Live, Diane, travel, laugh, find joy, and know that wherever I am, I'm proud of the woman you are and grateful for every moment we had together. The trust documents are with Richard Castellano. He has instructions to transfer full control to you upon presentation of this letter. All my love, always and forever, Gerald. I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from something else: gratitude, relief, and a deep, aching love for the man who had known me well enough to protect me even after death. The next morning, I sat in Richard Castellano's office while he verified the trust documents. "Your husband was a remarkable man," Richard said, looking over his reading glasses at me. "He set this up so carefully, so meticulously. He really thought of everything." "That was Gerald," I said. "Always thinking 3 steps ahead." "Have you decided what you want to do about the theft?" Richard asked. I thought about Catherine Price's question. I thought about Marcus's face when I told him I was evicting them. I thought about Vanessa's threat about never seeing my grandchildren again. Then I thought about Lily and Mason, 7 and 5 years old, being raised by parents who thought stealing from family was acceptable, who thought manipulation and cruelty were normal. "I want to file charges," I said. "All of them. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, everything." Richard nodded slowly. "That's your right. But Diane, you need to understand that Marcus will likely face criminal penalties. This isn't just civil court anymore. This is serious." "I know," I said. "And I want to do one more thing." Richard leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, waiting for me to continue. The morning light coming through his office windows was harsh and bright, and I was grateful for it. Harsh and bright was exactly how I needed to see the world right now. "I want to establish a trust for Lily and Mason," I said. "Separate from anything Marcus can access. They get it when they turn 25, but only if they maintain a relationship with me on their own terms, not through their parents as intermediaries. And I want provisions that if Marcus or Vanessa attempt to use the children as leverage against me, the funds get redirected to charity." Richard wrote notes on his yellow legal pad. "That's doable. I'll draft something comprehensive. How much are you thinking?" $500,000 each, from Gerald's trust." He looked up sharply. "That's half the trust." "I know, but those children didn't ask for any of this. They didn't ask for parents who steal. They deserve better, and if I can't give them better parents, at least I can give them a future." Richard smiled then, genuine warmth in his expression. "Gerald would be proud of you." "Gerald was always proud of me," I said. That's how I know he would have understood this. Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into a rhythm at the Riverside Hotel. I woke up without someone's passive-aggressive comments over breakfast. I cooked meals I actually wanted to eat. I took long walks along the river. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since Gerald died. Small watercolors at first, just the view from my window. But it felt good to create something beautiful. Marcus called from different numbers, but I recognized the area code and didn't answer. Vanessa apparently recruited her friends to call on her behalf, leaving messages that ranged from pleading to threatening. I deleted them all without listening completely. The 30-day eviction notice period was halfway through when I got a call from an unknown number with a different area code. This time, I answered. "Grandma?" The voice was small, uncertain. "Lily." My heart clenched. "Lily, sweetheart, hi." "Grandma, why don't you live with us anymore? Mommy said you were mad at us. Are you mad at me and Mason?" I closed my eyes, feeling the tears come. This was Vanessa's play. Use the children. Make me the villain in their story. "Lily, honey, I'm not mad at you or Mason. Not even a little bit. I love you both more than anything in the whole world." "Then why did you leave?" How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her mother is a manipulative narcissist and her father is too weak to protect anyone, including his own mother? How do you tell a child that sometimes adults make terrible choices and you have to protect yourself from them? "Sometimes grown-ups need to have their own space," I said gently. "Like how you and Mason each have your own room? I needed my own place to live, that's all." "But I miss you. Mason misses you too. He cries at night sometimes." My heart broke into smaller pieces. "Can I talk to your mom or dad, sweetie? Mommy said I could call you, but only for a minute. She's timing it. Daddy's at work." Of course she was timing it. Of course she had orchestrated this call to cause maximum emotional damage. I could picture Vanessa standing there, arms crossed, watching the clock, calculating exactly how much pressure to apply to make me crack. "Lily, I love you. Remember that, okay? No matter what anyone tells you, I love you and Mason more than anything." "Okay," she said, her voice wobbling. "Grandma?" "Yes, honey?" "Mommy says we're moving soon, to a new house, a better one. Is that true?" I felt cold. "I don't know, sweetheart. You'll have to ask your mommy about that." "Time's up, Lily." I heard Vanessa's voice in the background. "Say goodbye." "Bye, Grandma. I love you." "I love you too, sweet girl." The call ended. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, staring at nothing. Then I called Richard. "They're planning something," I said without preamble. "Vanessa just let Lily call me, which she has never done voluntarily. It was staged, calculated, and Lily said they're moving to a new house soon. They have 15 days left before the eviction is final," Richard said. "Where would they get the money for a new house? Marcus's credit is destroyed, and according to your financial records, they have maybe $12,000 in their joint account." "That's what I want you to find out," I said. "Hire an investigator if you need to. Something doesn't feel right. I'll make some calls." 2 days later, Richard called back. "You're not going to like this." "Tell me anyway." "Marcus and Vanessa filed a lawsuit against you yesterday. Elder abuse, coercion, and undue influence. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent, that you've been acting irrationally since Gerald's death, and that they've been trying to care for you despite your deteriorating condition. They're seeking guardianship and control of your assets." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was such an outrageous, transparent lie that laughter was the only possible response. "They're claiming I'm incompetent?" It gets worse. They have a psychiatrist willing to testify that based on a conversation with Marcus, he believes you may be suffering from early-onset dementia and that your recent decisions, including evicting your own family, are evidence of cognitive decline. A psychiatrist they paid, I assume? "Almost certainly." "What do we do?" "We fight it. which means you're going to need to undergo a psychiatric evaluation yourself to prove competency. I have someone I trust, Dr. Sarah Kim. She's done this type of work before. She's thorough, ethical, and her testimony holds weight in court. Set it up. I met Dr. Kim the next day. She was a small woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner. Ms. Hartwell, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Some will seem silly, some will seem invasive. I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Yes. For the next 3 hours, she put me through cognitive tests, memory exercises, problem-solving scenarios. She asked about my marriage, my relationship with Marcus, my decision-making process regarding the eviction. She asked about my finances, my daily routines, my future plans. When it was over, I was exhausted. How did I do? I asked. Dr. Kim smiled. Ms. Hartwell, you're one of the most mentally competent people I've assessed in my entire career. Your memory is exceptional, your reasoning is sound, and your decision-making shows clear, logical thought processes. Whoever is claiming you have dementia is either lying or deeply delusional. Both, probably, I said. Can you testify to that in court? Absolutely. The lawsuit hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out, which gave Richard and Catherine time to build our counter case. They worked with the kind of focused intensity that made me understand why they were both so respected in their fields. Catherine compiled evidence of the financial theft, transaction by transaction, with timestamps and IP addresses showing that the fraudulent transfers had been initiated from my home computer while I was documented as being elsewhere, at doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, anywhere with receipts or witnesses. Marcus and Vanessa hadn't been careful because they hadn't expected to get caught. Richard, meanwhile, gathered evidence of my mental competency, my active social life before moving in with them, testimony from my former business associates about my sharp mind and excellent judgment. He found the architect I'd worked with on 3 major projects last year, the investment advisor who'd praised my financial acumen, the Italian language tutor who said I was his fastest learning student in 20 years. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. My neighbor from the old house, Mrs. Chen, contacted Richard directly after hearing through the neighborhood grapevine what was happening. I have something you need to see, she told him. She brought security camera footage from her home system, which had a partial view of my driveway and front door. The footage showed something I hadn't known about. Multiple occasions over the past year where Vanessa had brought strange men to the house during the day, while Marcus was at work and I was out. The men would arrive in expensive cars, stay for an hour or 2, then leave. I thought maybe she was having an affair, Mrs. Chen said to Richard as I sat in his office watching the footage. But then I recognized one of them. He's a real estate investor, very aggressive, known for buying properties under questionable circumstances. My son-in-law works in real estate and warned me about him specifically. Richard paused the video on a clear shot of Vanessa greeting a man at my front door, all smiles and flirtatious energy. What do you think she was doing? I asked. I think, Richard said, slowly, that Vanessa was trying to sell your house out from under you. The pieces clicked into place. The sudden eviction attempt framed as me needing my own space. The lawsuit claiming incompetency. If they could get guardianship of me, they'd have control of my assets, including the house. They could sell it, take the money, and place me in a facility somewhere. Clean, simple, profitable. She's been planning this for months, I said. Maybe longer. This wasn't a reaction to you standing up to her. This was always the end game. You were just supposed to be compliant until they had everything locked down. What kind of person does this? I asked, not really expecting an answer. Someone who sees people as resources instead of humans, Richard said. Someone who fundamentally lacks empathy, and unfortunately, someone who managed to convince your son to go along with it. I thought about Marcus, about the boy who used to beg me to read him one more bedtime story, who made me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day with eggs so overcooked they bounced, who cried when our cat died and made me promise we'd see her again in heaven. I need you to hold that answer, I said suddenly. Richard looked confused. What? Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. I keep asking myself if I'm the villain in this story, if I'm being too harsh, too unforgiving. But every time I waver, I remember something else they did, another lie, another manipulation. Am I wrong for fighting back? Diane, Richard said gently. You're not fighting back. You're defending yourself. There's a difference. The day before the hearing, I got a visitor. I was in my suite, working on a watercolor of the river at sunset, when the hotel phone rang. Ms. Hartwell, you have a guest in the lobby, a Mr. Marcus Hartwell. He says he's your son, and that it's urgent. My hand tightened on the paintbrush. Tell him I'm not available. There was a pause. He says he's not leaving until you see him. Should I call security? Part of me wanted to say yes. But another part, the part that had loved him before all of this, needed to hear what he had to say. Send him up. I opened the door when he knocked. Marcus looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his clothes hung loose, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Mom, he said, and his voice cracked on the word. 5 minutes, I said, not moving from the doorway. That's all you get. Can I come in? No. He stood in the hallway, looking at his shoes. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know Vanessa was going to do all of this. The lawsuit, the psychiatrist, claiming you're incompetent. I didn't know. But you knew about the money you stole from me, I said flatly. You knew about the $73,000 in transfers beyond the original $40,000 I gave you willingly. He looked up, eyes wide. How did I find out? Because I'm not incompetent, Marcus. I'm not senile. I'm not the helpless old woman you and your wife wanted me to be. I hired professionals, real ones, not the frauds Vanessa found, and they found everything. Mom, please. I made mistakes, huge mistakes, but I love you. I never wanted it to go this far. Did you love me when you forged my signature trying to add your name to my investment portfolio? Did you love me when you stood in my kitchen and let Vanessa tell me I wasn't welcome in my own home? I was scared, he said, and tears were running down his face now. Vanessa said if I didn't do what she wanted, she'd leave and take the kids. I'd never see them again. She had lawyers ready, custody agreements drafted. I felt trapped. So you chose to trap me instead. The words hung between us. He had no answer for that, because there was no answer. He'd made his choice, and it hadn't been me. The hearing is tomorrow, I said. I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. The theft, the forgery, the manipulation, everything. You should prepare Vanessa for that. Mom, if you do this, it's over. We're done. You'll never see me or the kids again. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Marcus, we were done the moment you put Vanessa's threats above your mother's dignity. We were done when you chose easy money over hard truth. We were done when you stood silently by and watched her try to erase me. I can fix this, he said desperately. I can make this right. Just drop the charges, drop the countersuit, and I'll make sure we pay you back, every penny. I promise. Your promises don't mean anything anymore, I said. I'm sorry, I know that's harsh, but it's true. I started to close the door. He put his hand out, stopping it. Mom, please, think about Lily and Mason. They need their grandmother. I have thought about them, constantly, which is why I've established trust funds for them that you can't touch. They'll have money for college, for their futures, completely separate from you and Vanessa. I've made sure they'll be taken care of no matter what happens to me. His face went pale. You're cutting us out completely. I'm protecting my grandchildren from their parents' mistakes. There's a difference. I closed the door. Marcus stood on the other side for another minute. I could see his shadow under the door, hear his breathing. Then his footsteps retreated down the hallway. I leaned against the door, shaking. Part of me wanted to run after him, to take it all back, to be the forgiving mother who smoothed everything over like I'd done 100 times before. But I stayed where I was, because the woman who smoothed things over, who kept the peace at any cost, had gotten robbed, manipulated, and nearly declared incompetent. That woman needed to stay gone. The hearing the next day was in a sterile courtroom that smelled of old wood and air conditioning. Marcus and Vanessa sat on one side with their attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Douglas Brenner, who had a reputation for winning cases through aggressive intimidation tactics. Richard sat next to me, Catherine on his other side, Dr. Kim behind us. All rise, the bailiff said, and Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She looked like somebody's grandmother, which I suspected made people underestimate her. Big mistake. Brenner opened with his argument, painting a picture of me as a confused, grieving widow who'd become increasingly irrational since my husband's death, making bizarre financial decisions and turning against my loving family who'd only tried to help me. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mrs. Hartwell has displayed classic signs of cognitive decline. She's become paranoid, hostile, and has made accusations against her own son that have no basis in reality. She's withdrawn from her grandchildren, her social circle has narrowed dramatically, and she's spending money erratically, including taking up residence in an expensive hotel she can't afford long-term. That's interesting, Judge Morrison said, looking over her glasses at Brenner. You say she can't afford the hotel long-term, but you also want guardianship of her assets. If she's broke, why do you need control of her money? Brenner stumbled slightly. She has retirement savings that need proper management. I see. Continue. When it was Richard's turn, he was surgical. He presented Catherine's forensic accounting, showing each fraudulent transfer with documentation. He showed the attempted forgery on my investment portfolio. He showed Mrs. Chen's security footage of Vanessa meeting with real estate investors. He called Dr. Kim, who testified that I was not only competent, but exceptionally sharp for my age. In fact, Dr. Kim said, Mrs. Hartwell's cognitive function tests placed her in the 97th percentile for her age group. I've evaluated hundreds of patients, and I can say without hesitation that she is fully capable of making her own financial and personal decisions. Then Richard called me to the stand. Brenner's cross-examination was aggressive, trying to make me seem confused, trying to trip me up on dates and details. But I'd spent 30 years running a business, negotiating with contractors and clients, managing budgets and deadlines. A lawyer's intimidation tactics were nothing compared to trying to explain to a bride why her dress wouldn't be ready if she kept changing the design every 3 days. Mrs. Hartwell, Brenner said, leaning on the witness box. Isn't it true that you've become increasingly isolated since your husband's death? No, I said calmly. I maintained an active social life until I moved into my son's house 18 months ago. After that, I became isolated because my daughter-in-law made it clear my friends weren't welcome. Isn't it true that you've made irrational financial decisions, like giving your son $40,000 and then demanding it back? I gave him $40,000 willingly. I didn't demand it. Back. I'm demanding back the $73,000 he stole by accessing my accounts without permission. Brenner held up a paper. But you kept your passwords written in a notebook in your desk? Isn't that incredibly careless? I kept them in my private desk in my private home office. I didn't expect my own son to steal from me. Objection, Brenner said. Characterizing legal transfers from accessible accounts as theft is inflammatory. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Ms. Hartwell, please stick to facts. The fact is, I said, looking directly at the judge, that I never authorized those transfers. The fact is that they were made from my home computer when I was documented as being elsewhere. The fact is that my son and daughter-in-law had both the means and the motive to steal from me, and they did. The judge wrote something down. After both sides rested, Judge Morrison took a 15-minute recess. When she returned, her face was stern. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, she said, and I'm prepared to make my ruling. First, regarding the guardianship petition, denied. Mrs. Hartwell has clearly demonstrated full mental competency. The psychiatric testimony claiming otherwise is contradicted by actual testing and observation. Second, regarding the allegations of financial impropriety. I'm finding sufficient evidence to warrant criminal investigation. I'm ordering that this case be referred to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution. Vanessa gasped. Marcus closed his eyes. Additionally, Judge Morrison continued, I'm granting Mrs. Hartwell's emergency restraining order. Marcus and Vanessa Hartwell are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Hartwell directly or attempting to access any of her assets. They have 72 hours to vacate her property or face immediate arrest for trespassing. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I sat there, letting it sink in. I'd won. Completely and totally won. Outside the courtroom, Richard shook my hand. That was about as clean a victory as you can get. The DA will likely file charges within a week. What happens to Marcus? I asked. If convicted of identity theft and fraud, he's looking at 2 to 5 years. Vanessa too, possibly more since she orchestrated it. 2 to 5 years. My son, in prison. I should have felt triumph, but all I felt was hollow. Catherine touched my arm. Diane, you did what you had to do. You protected yourself. I know, I said. It just doesn't feel like winning. That night, I sat in my hotel suite and let myself cry for the first time since all of this started. Not polite tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere ancient and primal. I cried for the mother I'd been, for the son I'd lost, for the grandmother I might never get to be again. I cried until there was nothing left, and then I washed my face, made myself tea, and sat by the window watching the city lights. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me read it first. Grandma, this is Lily. I'm using my friend's phone. Mommy and Daddy are fighting a lot. They say we have to move again. I'm scared. I love you. My heart cracked open all over again. I texted back immediately. I love you too, sweet girl. Everything is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Promise? I promise. The dots vanished. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I called Richard. Richard answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the late hour. Diane, What's wrong? I told him about Lily's text. She's terrified, Richard. She's 7 years old and caught in the middle of something she can't understand. And it's my fault. I did this. You didn't do this, he said firmly. Marcus and Vanessa did this through their own actions. You're just refusing to be their victim anymore. But the children are victims. They didn't choose this. No, they didn't. Which is why I think it's time we talk about something I've been considering. Would you be interested in pursuing custody? The question hung in the air. Custody. Raising Lily and Mason. At 63, starting over with 2 young children. I'm too old, I said automatically. You're 63, healthy, financially stable, and demonstrably more competent than their current guardians. Age isn't the barrier you think it is. Vanessa would fight it with everything she has. Let her fight. After today's hearing, after the criminal charges, after the financial fraud is exposed, she's not in a strong position, and Marcus is even weaker. I thought about Lily's text. I'm scared. How would it work? I asked. First, we'd file for emergency temporary custody based on the current instability of the home environment. The eviction, the criminal investigation, the clear financial stress. Then we'd build a case for permanent custody. It won't be easy, but Diane, you've already proven you can handle difficult things. I need to think about it. Of course. But think quickly. The DA is filing charges tomorrow, and once that happens, things are going to move fast. Marcus and Vanessa are going to be focused on their criminal defense. That's when you want to act on the custody front. I hung up and sat in the darkness. Could I really raise 2 children again? Did I have the energy, the patience, the strength? Then I thought about Lily, 7 years old, texting from a friend's phone because she was too scared to talk to her own parents. I thought about Mason, 5 years old, crying at night. I thought about the kind of adults they'd become if they stayed with Marcus and Vanessa, learning that manipulation and theft were acceptable, that love was conditional on obedience. I picked up the phone and called Richard back. Do it. File for emergency custody. Are you sure? No, I said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. The next 3 days were chaos. Richard filed the emergency custody petition. The DA filed criminal charges against both Marcus and Vanessa, multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, and forgery. The story hit the local news because apparently wealthy suburban couples stealing from elderly parents makes for good television. My phone rang constantly with reporters asking for comments. I ignored them all. Marcus and Vanessa were arrested at the house, my house, while trying to pack their belongings. The footage showed them being led out in handcuffs while neighbors watched. Lily and Mason stood on the porch with a social worker who'd been called to take them into temporary state custody. That image, my grandchildren watching their parents being arrested, would haunt me forever. But I couldn't think about that now. I had to focus on getting them somewhere safe. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for the following week. Richard prepared me for what to expect. Brenner is going to argue that you're vindictive, that you're punishing Marcus through his children, that you're too old to handle 2 young kids. He's going to make you sound like a vengeful witch who cares more about revenge than her grandchildren's well-being. How do we counter that? By being exactly who you are, calm, competent, genuinely concerned about those children. Let him be aggressive. Let him overreach. The judge will see through it. The hearing was in family court, a less formal setting than the previous courtroom, but somehow more intimidating. Lily and Mason were there, sitting with their social worker, looking small and confused. When Lily saw me, she started to get up, but the social worker gently held her back. "Not yet, honey," I heard her say. "Soon." Brenner argued exactly as Richard had predicted. "Your Honor, Mrs. Hartwell's petition for custody is nothing more than retribution against her son. She's using these children as weapons in her personal vendetta. She's 63 years old, living in a hotel, with no stable home environment to offer. The children have been through enough trauma without being uprooted from the only home they've known." Judge David Patterson, a younger man, maybe 50, with kind eyes, listened without expression. When Richard presented our case, he was methodical. "Your Honor, Mrs. Hartwell owns the home these children have been living in. She can provide them stability that their parents currently cannot. While their parents face serious criminal charges, Mrs. Hartwell has been cleared of all competency questions and has established trust funds for both children's futures. She's not seeking custody out of revenge. She's seeking it out of love and concern for children who are currently in state custody because their parents are awaiting trial." Then he called witnesses. Dr. Kim testified about my mental competency. Catherine testified about my financial stability. Mrs. Chen testified about the unstable environment at the house, the strange men Vanessa brought around, the loud arguments late at night that she could hear from next door. "Those children were often outside alone," Mrs. Chen said, "playing in the yard with no supervision for hours. Once, Lily knocked on my door at 8 in the evening asking if I had any food. She said they hadn't had dinner yet, and she was hungry." I hadn't known that. The anger that rose in me was cold and focused. Finally, Richard called me. "Mrs. Hartwell, why do you want custody of your grandchildren?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. "Because they're scared," I said. "Because they're innocent victims of their parents' bad choices. Because I have the means and the ability to give them stability, safety, and love. Because when Lily texted me that she was scared, my heart broke, and I knew I had to do everything in my power to help her. That's what grandmothers do. We protect our grandchildren, even when it means fighting our own children." "Are you prepared for what that means? Raising 2 young children at your age?" "I raised one child as a single mother after my husband died when Marcus was 12. I built a successful business while making sure my son had everything he needed. I'm older now, yes, but I'm also wiser, more patient, and more financially stable. I know what I'm capable of." Brenner's cross-examination tried to shake me. "Mrs. Hartwell, isn't it true that you've evicted your own son from his home?" "I've evicted him from my home, yes, after he stole over $100,000 from me? And you think that makes you a good role model for these children?" "I think standing up for yourself when someone wrongs you, even family, is an important lesson. I think showing children that actions have consequences is crucial, and I think protecting yourself from people who exploit you, even if they're your own son, is self-respect, not vindictiveness." Judge Patterson called a recess. During the break, Lily slipped away from her social worker and ran to me. I caught her in my arms, holding her tight. "Grandma, can we come live with you?" she whispered. "I promise we'll be good. Mason misses you so much." "I miss you too, sweetie. Both of you. So much." The social worker gently retrieved her. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hartwell. I can't let them have contact until the judge makes his ruling." "I understand." But Lily looked back at me as she was led away, and the hope in her eyes was almost unbearable. When Judge Patterson returned, the courtroom fell silent. "I've considered all the testimony and evidence presented," he said. "This is not an easy decision. On one hand, the children have a bond with their parents, and uprooting them carries trauma. On the other hand, Their parents are facing serious criminal charges and have demonstrated poor judgment in multiple areas. Mrs. Hartwell, please stand. I stood, my legs shaking. I'm granting your petition for temporary emergency custody, pending the resolution of the criminal case against Marcus and Vanessa Hartwell. You will have custody of Lily and Mason for a minimum of 6 months, at which point we'll reconvene to determine permanent arrangements. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I almost sat down. However, the judge continued, there are conditions. You must establish a stable permanent residence within 30 days. The hotel is acceptable temporarily, but not long-term. You must enroll the children in school and maintain their medical care. And you must allow supervised visitation with their parents, provided the parents are not incarcerated. I understand, Your Honor. Thank you. Lily and Mason were brought to me. Lily threw her arms around my waist, and Mason, shyer, took my hand and held it tight. Can we really stay with you, Grandma? Lily asked. Yes, sweetheart, you can really stay with me. Across the courtroom, Vanessa was crying, but they were angry tears. Marcus just looked defeated. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a deep sadness that it had come to this. The first night with the children was awkward. They'd each brought a small suitcase of clothes and toys, and we ordered pizza in my hotel suite while they sat on the couch looking around with wide eyes. Grandma, this place is fancy, Mason said, his first full sentence to me all day. It is fancy, I agreed, but it's just temporary. We're going to find a real house, somewhere you can each have your own room and a yard to play in. With a dog? Lily asked hopefully. I laughed. Maybe with a dog. We'll see. That night, they shared the bedroom while I took the couch. I lay awake listening to them whisper to each other, hearing the fear and confusion in their voices. Is Mommy going to be okay? Mason asked. I don't know, Lily said. But Grandma's here. Grandma won't let anything bad happen to us. The trust in her voice made me close my eyes against tears. I had to be worthy of that trust. The next morning, I called a realtor I'd worked with years ago. Janet, I need a house. 4 bedrooms, good school district, yard, available immediately. That's a tall order, Diane. What's your budget? I thought about Gerald's trust, about the money he'd left specifically for me to rebuild my life. Let's say up to $1 million. I want something nice, but practical. A home, not a showpiece. Janet called back 3 hours later. I have something. It's been on the market for 2 months. Owner is motivated. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, quarter-acre yard, excellent school district. It needs some cosmetic work, but it's structurally sound. They're asking $850,000, but I think I can get them down to $750,000. Set up a showing for tomorrow. I want to bring my grandchildren. The house was perfect. Not perfect in a magazine way, but perfect in a home way. Hardwood floors that needed refinishing, walls that needed fresh paint, but good bones and a warmth that the hotel had lacked. Lily ran through the rooms, picking out which one would be hers. Mason found the backyard and stood staring at the old oak tree with a tire swing. Can we get this one, Grandma? Lily asked. Can we? Yes, I said. We can get this one. The closing happened in 2 weeks, expedited because I paid cash. Janet nearly fell over when I told her. Cash? Diane, I've been in real estate for 20 years. I've never seen someone your age come in with cash for a $750,000 house. My husband was a very smart man who planned ahead, I said. We moved in on a Saturday. The children's rooms were still empty of furniture, but I'd ordered beds that would arrive Monday, and for now, we had air mattresses and sleeping bags that made it feel like camping. Lily thought it was an adventure. Mason was quieter, but I caught him smiling when he thought I wasn't looking. That night, after the children were asleep, I sat on the floor of what would become my home office and called Richard. "We did it. We're in the house." "How does it feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful and exhausting all at once. Is this what parents of young children feel like all the time?" He laughed. "Pretty much. You'll get used to it." "Richard, thank you for everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Diane, you did this yourself. I just filed the paperwork. The strength, the courage, the decision to fight back, that was all you." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding. I Googled Marcus and Vanessa's names. The articles were brutal. Local couple charged with defrauding elderly mother. Son steals thousands from widow. Grandmother wins custody after daughter-in-law's theft exposed. The comments sections were worse. People I'd never met weighing in on our family's tragedy, calling Marcus and Vanessa monsters, calling me a saint, reducing our complex, painful situation to clickbait and hot takes. I closed the laptop. Whatever happened in public didn't matter. What mattered was the 2 children sleeping upstairs and giving them a childhood they could look back on without shame. The trial was set for 3 months later. In that time, I focused on making the house a home. We painted Lily's room purple, her favorite color. We painted Mason's room blue with white clouds on the ceiling that I hand-painted myself. I enrolled them in the local elementary school, where Lily thrived and Mason struggled with the transition, but slowly adapted. The supervised visitations with Marcus and Vanessa were hard. They happened twice a month in a sterile room at the courthouse with a social worker present. Vanessa would cry and tell the children how much she missed them. Marcus would sit there looking broken, trying to make conversation about school and friends while avoiding my eyes completely. After the 3rd visit, Lily asked me, "Grandma, why can't Mommy and Daddy just say they're sorry?" out of the mouths of babes. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes so big that sorry isn't enough," I said carefully. "Sometimes there have to be consequences." "But don't you forgive them?" 7 years old and asking the question that kept me awake at night. "I'm working on it, sweetie. Forgiveness takes time." The truth was more complicated. I'd forgiven them for hurting me. That was surprisingly easy. What I couldn't forgive was what they'd done to their own children, the instability and fear they'd created, the way they'd been willing to sacrifice Lily and Mason's well-being for their own comfort. That forgiveness might never come. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I didn't attend most of it. Couldn't bear to sit there watching Marcus and Vanessa's defense attorney try to paint them as victims of my vindictiveness. But I was there for the verdict. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman read the verdicts in a clear, steady voice. Marcus, guilty on 3 counts of identity theft, 2 counts of fraud. Vanessa, guilty on 4 counts of identity theft, 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of forgery. The sentencing hearing was a month later. I did attend that because the judge wanted to hear from me before making his decision. "Mrs. Hartwell," Judge Morrison said, "you have the opportunity to make a statement before I pass sentence. Would you like to do so?" I stood, looking at Marcus for the first time in months. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Vanessa stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. "Your Honor, thank you," I said. "I've thought a lot about what to say today. Part of me wants to ask for leniency, because despite everything, Marcus is still my son, and some part of me still loves the boy he used to be. But that boy is gone, replaced by a man who chose money over his mother, who let his wife orchestrate a systematic theft, who was willing to have me declared incompetent to cover his crimes. So instead of asking for leniency, I'm asking for justice. Real justice. These crimes weren't committed in a moment of desperation. They were planned, calculated, carried out over more than a year. Every time Marcus logged into my accounts, every time Vanessa forged my signature, they made a choice. They chose greed over integrity. They chose comfort over truth. And they chose to victimize someone who had only ever loved them and supported them. But more than that, they victimized their own children. Lily and Mason have lost their parents because of the choices Marcus and Vanessa made. They have to live with the knowledge that their mommy and daddy are in prison for stealing from grandma. That's a burden no child should carry. Your Honor, I'm asking you to consider not just the crime, but the ripples it created, the family it destroyed, the children it hurt, and I'm asking that the sentence reflect the seriousness of that betrayal. I sat down. My hands were shaking, but my voice had stayed steady. Judge Morrison took off her glasses. Thank you, Mrs. Hartwell. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell, I've reviewed the pre-sentencing reports, the financial documents, and the testimony from the trial. What strikes me most is not the amount stolen, though that is significant. It's the systematic nature of the crime and the target. You stole from a family member who trusted you, who had supported you financially, who welcomed you into her home. That's a profound betrayal. Marcus Hartwell, I sentence you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Vanessa Hartwell, I sentence you to 5 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You will both be required to pay full restitution of $113,000, plus interest and penalties. Additionally, I'm terminating your parental rights pending the outcome of the custody case. You will have no contact with your children until they are of legal age and can decide for themselves whether they want a relationship with you. Vanessa cried out, but the bailiffs were already moving to take them away. Marcus looked at me one last time. Mom, he said, but I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Richard guided me past them to his car. How do you feel? He asked when we were safely away. Empty, I said, like I won the war but lost everything that mattered. You saved your grandchildren. That's not nothing. I know. I just wish it hadn't required destroying my son. We drove in silence. When Richard dropped me at the house, Lily and Mason were waiting with the neighbor who'd been watching them. They ran to me, and I held them both. Is it over? Lily asked. Yes, sweetheart, it's over. Are Mommy and Daddy coming home? Mason asked. I knelt down to his level. No, honey, they're not. They did some things that were wrong, and they have to go away for a while as punishment. But you and Lily are staying here with me, and I'm going to take care of you. Is that okay? Mason thought about it seriously. Will you make your special pancakes on Saturdays? Every Saturday, I promised. Then it's okay, he said, and hugged me tight. That night, after the children were asleep, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and thought about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I'd been standing in a kitchen that used to be mine, listening to my daughter-in-law tell me there wasn't room for both of us. I'd been broken, humiliated, dismissed. Now I owned a beautiful house, had custody of my grandchildren, and had proven to the world that being old didn't mean being powerless. But the victory tasted like ashes because it had cost me my son. I'd spent 35 years raising Marcus, loving him, sacrificing for him, and he'd thrown it away for money he didn't need, to please a woman who didn't deserve him. Where had I gone wrong? Was it something I'd done or failed to do? Or was it simply that sometimes people make choices that have nothing to do with how they were raised and everything to do with who they choose to become? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but curiosity made me open it. Mrs. Hartwell, this is Douglas Brenner. I represented your son and daughter-in-law. I wanted you to know that Marcus asked me to deliver a message. He says he's sorry. He says he knows sorry isn't enough. But he needs you to know that he's sorry, and that he loves you, and that he hopes someday you can forgive him. He also says to tell Lily and Mason that he loves them, and that everything he did because he thought he was providing for them. He knows now that he was wrong. I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. Maybe someday I'd be able to hear Marcus's apologies and feel something other than anger and grief. Maybe someday I'd be able to tell Lily and Mason stories about their father that didn't end with, and then he went to prison. But not today. Today, I had 2 children who needed stability, love, and a grandmother who could show them that strength didn't mean never falling. It meant getting back up even when you wanted to stay down. I heard footsteps on the porch. Mason stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, hair sticking up, clutching his stuffed elephant. "Grandma, I can't sleep." I held out my arms, and he climbed into my lap, even though he was getting too big for it. "Bad dreams?" "No, just thinking." "About what?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Is it my fault Mommy and Daddy did bad things?" My heart broke all over again. "Oh, Mason, no, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Grown-ups make their own choices, and sometimes they make bad ones. But that's never the fault of children. You and Lily did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing." "Okay," he said, but he still sounded uncertain. "Mason, look at me." He did, his eyes so serious for a 5-year-old. "Your mommy and daddy love you very much. They just forgot how to make good choices. But that doesn't change how much they love you, and it definitely doesn't change how much I love you. You and Lily are the best things in my life. You're my second chance to get it right." "Get what right?" "Being a mom," I said. "I thought I did a good job with your daddy, but somewhere along the way, something went wrong. So now I get to try again with you and your sister. That's pretty special, don't you think?" He nodded against my shoulder. "Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart? I'm glad we live with you." "Me too, Mason. Me too." We sat there on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the yard, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something like peace. Not happiness, not yet. But peace. The knowledge that I'd done the right thing, even though it was the hardest thing. That I'd protected the people who needed protecting, even when it meant going to war with my own son. So here's where I ask you, the people I've trusted with my story. Was I right? Should I have been more forgiving, more understanding, more willing to give Marcus another chance? Or did I do what any reasonable person would do when pushed to the breaking point? Team Diane or Team Marcus? I genuinely need to know if I was justified. Because some days, I wake up certain I made the right choice, and other days, I lie awake wondering if I destroyed my family for pride. Drop your honest thoughts below. And if you're facing something similar, if someone in your family has betrayed you in a way that makes you question everything, know that you're not alone. Next week, I'll be back with another confession, but this time, from someone who found evidence that her sister had been slowly poisoning her for an inheritance. Same moral complexity, same desperate need for judgment. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, more real people facing impossible choices and wondering if they're the villains in their own lives. Until then, thank you for listening, for judging, and for making me feel a little less alone in this mess. I read every single comment, and I promise I'll take your verdict to heart, whatever it is.